I believe all participants were able to use a dodge in the netball game, and the majority were able to identify when a dodge needs to be used in order to get into space and away from a defender. The overall movement could be performed by all performers at the end of the session in a controlled environment, and some progressed into the session by manipulating the defender to get into space so they could receive a pass. I think I managed to see an individual's attempt at least once throughout the session, although feedback and one-to-one time could be improved upon. However, I do believe this session targets of ensuring a relatively monotonous skill was turned into a fun and enjoyable session. I considered the coaching points and condensed it down into an acronym that I repeated throughout the session to reiterate the points to ensure that everyone understood the technique and the skill. Tricks. Relevant drills were planned out that related to the skill. This allowed a base of the skill to be formed to progress to a drill and then to a conditioned game. I adapted the circumstances presented to me when my session got shifted up a slot. I felt like I adapted as best as I could to the situation by incorporating an additional warm-up to the session whilst I set the equipment up. Although my preparation was poor in terms of equipment that needed to be set up prior to the session, so I can focus on developing each and individual performer. The knowledge and explanation of the rules of the game were poor. This is because I didn't do much research on the conditioned game of netball, so there was confusion. Progression of the skill was out of order. It should have been related to the game scenario before we jumped straight into the game. To help this, I could attain a level 1 netball coaching qualification. This will enable me to develop my skills as a coach and make the session more enjoyable and sport related. When delivering the session, I thought there was an opportunity there for me to spend more time with the performers. In order to attain my level 1 netball coaching qualification, there will be a cost involved which could not be afforded unless sponsorship deals occur, and the delivery time would be extended due to me spending more one-on-one time with performers, which will cause the session to overrun. The warm-up was relevant and specific to the skill in the session, and started to develop relevant stimulus response bonds for the footwork in order to complete the skill. Because the skills were relevant and related closely together in my plan, part progression training could be used. The use of the acronym KIWI was relevant and helpful to the performers. My verbal communication was a strength in my session because I broke the skill down into each of its discrete elements and gathered everyone in close proximity to myself so they could hear what I had to say. Throughout the session, the main aim of the session was apparent, because I focused strongly on the whole session being about the dodge, and this was effective with the conditioned game whereby you could only score by completing a dodge or getting a free of the defender. I didn't research the rules of the netball game and didn't have a full understanding of the rules. Performers were not being fully immersed in the session and focusing on the main skill related to the sport. This meant in the last game, the performers were unsure and confused to what the rules were exactly. In order to improve my knowledge of netball, I will recite the rules of netball from various resources like the internet and books on netball rules and regulations from England Netball. This will be beneficial in my future sessions because the players will not be as confused as to what the drill is trying to recreate, as I will be able to enforce match scenarios much better. Another area to improve is when demonstrating, is to try not to talk at the same time when demonstrating, especially when facing away from the group. This meant for some participants they could not hear the coaching points I had for the drill as my back was turned away from them, meaning that some performers were unsure of the correct technique to improve. I will organise my drills in such a way that the group of performers can watch from an angle whereby my voice is still projecting forwards. This means the back of the group are much more likely to hear me and understand the aims and objectives of the drill, allowing us to progress quicker on to the next activity without the need to stop and respond to questions. This area of improvement will be based upon a session from witnessing a level 2 netball coach for 2 sessions a week to pick up the key themes they use when demonstrating and explaining a skill. These key themes will be transferred into my next session to improve the development of the performers. My progression of the skill was out of order. I started with a relevant warm-up of ladders to generate a kinesthetic sense, although I decided to go into a controlled game to get an understanding of the skill in a small space. The session was then split into smaller groups whereby they focused on the fundamentals of the skill, isolating the movement. In hindsight, it should have been the other way round, to build on fundamentals rather than make it challenging to the participants. Here there was a lack of effort from the players because they were not fully aware of the skill, and this hindered the session. To improve the session next time, I believe I should attain a level 1 netball coaching qualification to help me develop and further my understanding of structuring a session. This will benefit the participants as they can use a progressive part method of training, which is a slow process but allows weaknesses in the dodge to be targeted and the performers to understand different subroutines involved.